Good day, everybody. This is Joe Van Cleve. Welcome to another episode of the Typewriter video series. Today's video, I'm going to talk about one of the aspects of using manual typewriters where us human operators aren't perfect and we invariably are going to make mistakes. And so I'm going to talk about correction tape. Well, if you've been shopping around for used typewriters, if you're a typewriter collector, you've invariably received typewriters that were filthy on the inside from the residue of both liquid correction fluid and those little correction tabs, those little rectangular pieces of plastic with a white coating, and you would slip them in the typewriter and type over them. These days, we have available these little cartridges of plastic film that are coated with a white correction, dry type of correction film, and you just roll them over your typos and it covers them up if you're using white paper, of course. You'll see that there are two general types of form factors of these. There's kind of the big round style, and then there's these longer, skinnier, pencil-like cartridges. Let's start off with the big fat kind. Now, the big name in cartridges, at least what I've been able to find here in the United States, in my hometown of Albuquerque, the big name is Whiteout, W-I-T-E, made by Bic. Whereas, alternatively, for instance, I went to my local Staples, which is a big box office supply retailer, and Staples has their own house brand of cartridges. Along with the name brand like Bic Whiteout and maybe the big box retail stores, if you go to other stores, you'll find off-brands. Like this is Tombow brand, and I have in this baggie a whole mess of these fatter style cartridges. But what I noticed about them is they are the fatter style, but they have kind of a, let me show you this one that's transparent. They have kind of an interesting geared system. These big sprocket type gears on the two hubs. My single biggest criticism of these correction tape cartridges that if they were to correct these defects would make it a lot more pleasurable to use is twofold. Okay, one problem I see is invariably, regardless of what style or brand you're talking about, all the ones I've tried, when you start using the cartridge, it generally rolls really easy. You don't have to put much pressure on it, and it'll dispense the tape right onto the paper really seamlessly and pleasurably. But as you begin to use it more, you'll find a lot of these, they don't roll as smoothly anymore. It's harder to get the tape to actually move. And you'll find that when you start to make a correction on the paper that it's threaded in the typewriter, it doesn't always immediately start printing. The other problem I've seen is a lot of times when it does dispense the tape on the paper, it doesn't come off evenly. It kind of shreds it and leaves it kind of messy, and then you have to poke it down with your finger, so it can get real kind of messy. It looks like this technology doesn't work quite as well as you hoped it would have. The other problem I've seen, and it's specific, as far as I've noted, it's specific to this Bic Whiteout brand that comes in the skinny pencil type ones. So these are both the same model out of the same pack. They're just different colors. And I've been using them relatively the same amount. If I look at the usage on the spools, they look like I've probably used the yellow one a little bit more than the blue one, but they've both been used pretty good. The difference is the yellow one, it doesn't roll very smoothly. I have to press really hard to get it to dispense. It's just really frustrating. The blue one, it dispenses perfectly, at least a lot better than the other one. So there seems to be a lot of variability between individual units, even in the same packaging. Well, now that we've gone over the basic different form factors and some of the popular models of these correction tape cartridges, let's look closer at how they work. Let's do a little performance test, shall we? To start off our comparison here, we're going to start with the orange Bic Whiteout cartridge, the one I complained about. What I'm going to do with this test is I'm going to start along this bottom line on the grid paper. I also want to make sure that we start the tape right at the top here, just to give it a fair test. So I'm going to try to do this to all of them. Start them right at the top here, okay? So now I'm going to lay the tip here, press and move it. Okay, so we have a pretty good start. There's a little bit of a gap there. Okay, the next one is going to be the blue, and I'm going to get that tip started right there. I'm going to lay the blue next to it. And it looks to me so far like the blue one actually does start a little bit quicker than that one. The next one we're going to use is this Staples brand correction cartridge, which I have not used at all. And I'm going to get it lined up here. And you have to hold these sideways like this. Now this one started laying down the white tape even sooner than the other two, and it felt like it rolled easier. And I also know on the Staples one, they have a little metal roller right on the tip. The other ones don't have that, but the Staples brand seems to have that, which looks very interesting. Okay, so that's the Staples brand roller. And then finally, we're going to use this retro Tombow brand, and it's set up at the top. And let's see how that works. Get it right at the line. And so let's look in comparison here what we got here. This is the orange, long, skinny, whiteout Bic. There's the blue one. They're the same identical cartridge other than color. There is a little difference. This is the fatter Staples type cartridge, and this is what I call the off-brand Tombow retro one. And you notice on the retro one, it looks like the film didn't quite adhere completely to the paper, okay? Well, this initial test is just an initial test between these four individual cartridges. It does reveal some differences between them, but it doesn't really show the differences in experience I've had between these two of the same brand, for instance. Neither does it really is it really representative of what it's like to apply this correction tape to paper that's rolled into a typewriter, because the surface is cylindrical, it's curved instead of being flat. So let's repeat this test, but let's roll a piece of paper, that same one, into a typewriter and try it then. Here we are with the Webster XL747 Brother typewriter. It's nice being a typewriter collector. You don't have to go very far to get a typewriter out of the closet. So this is the same piece of paper we used earlier. I've marked the tracks and the whiteout by the name of the cartridge. And so I'm going to kind of do the same test in the same order. I'm going to use this line right here, right at the top of the paper guides. Now, one thing about these you'll notice, maybe if you use this, is that some of these cartridges, the tape has a tendency to back roll itself. So I'm kind of cheating, and I'm giving it a break by pulling it back up so it's even. So I'm going to go ahead and go right here, apply my normal line. So there's the orange one. It looks like it started about a couple millimeters late, and it's kind of wrinkled on one side. Here's the blue Bic whiteout. Get it set up here even. Put it right next to it, start at the same line. And it looks like it started a little sooner, and it's a little wrinkled, and it might be my fault for the technique I'm using. This is the Staples cartridge, and interestingly enough, it's still lined up fine on the tip. So we're going to set it right at the same line, and it's interesting because it looks like it's actually delayed. And maybe I didn't see that properly, but that's interesting. Okay, so it laid down an even line, a little more even. It wasn't wrinkled, but it's a little delayed. And finally, here's the Tombow Retro, and it needs to be adjusted on the tip also, so it's an even, a little more of a fair test. Let's see how that goes. Ooh. And this is interesting because the film is kind of shredded, and it made a very uneven mark on the paper. Well, I think the only thing I can do now is to repeat the same test with all four of them. What I'm going to do this time is I'm not going to give them a break. If they decide that the film is going to back roll itself, then that's just the way it is. But I'm going to put it right on the line, and there's the orange. There's the blue right on the line. Here's the Staples right on the line, and here is the Tombow right on the line. Okay, let's take a look at this and see. So here is our test, our last 4. You can see again the orange Bic does start a little bit later than the blue one, and the problem with the orange one might be that it wants to back roll itself, where the blue cartridge doesn't. The Staples cartridge started right on the line and it applied pretty good. It felt smoother, and of course there's a slight wrinkle. The Tombow one, again, it shredded itself at the very start, probably because it was already shredded from the previous one. Now, one more test I might show is sometimes when you have a typographical error and it's only one letter in the middle of the word, sometimes it's tempting to, instead of erasing it this way vertically where you're going to erase at least 2 letters, sometimes it's tempting to want to go sideways with it like that and just get one of the letters, right? Well, if you use either of these long pencil-like type cartridges, it's pretty easy on most typewriters to get in there like this and do a sideways motion, right? But the 2 round fat cartridges, it's just, you can't really get in there at horizontal. You kind of have to do it at an angle like that because they're just too short and stubby. The same thing with the Tombow one, right? You just can't get in there sideways. The body of the typewriter prevents that. So you'd have to kind of do a 45-degree angle, which if you're going to do that, you might as well just do a vertical motion. Well, my concluding thoughts on this little review, if you will, is that first of all, this is an entirely unscientific test. Okay, we don't have these in laboratories with robots with force detection and measuring the coefficient of friction between the tape and the different kinds of paper surfaces. I'm sure the cartridges might perform differently based on what kind of paper it is, how much grip it has, how well the film sticks to the paper. But my general impressions are that ergonomically, the 2 Bic long skinny ones are probably the best as far as the way it's easy to get into the typewriter, into where the typing is, and you can go horizontally or vertically on the paper to do your erasure marks. So if these 2 were able to make a really reliable line, and especially to start at a more accurate place, I would say these would be the best. But obviously they're not consistent from one model to the next because, again, these came out of the same package and one writes better than the other. As far as the Tombow Retro, no, it's a fail. It just doesn't lay down the tape as smoothly, the film. It's just consistently bad. I would say the Staples one seems to have thus far, keeping in mind I'm only using it, I'm only started to use it, and as you know from what I said earlier, at the start, a lot of these cartridges, most of them feel really good. It's only when you later use it that you start to notice problems. But initially, the Staples one seems to lay down a more consistent line, and it seems to roll much smoother, and I attribute that to that little metal roller that they have on the tip, which is a great idea, but the Staples one is the only one I've seen that has that feature. Now, the downside of this form factor is the fact that it's short and stubby, and you can't really get in there and do horizontal motions. It's just too short. So my initial conclusion is I'm going to start using this Staples cartridge, and I'm going to see how it works for me. I'd also be interested to go back to the store and see if they have any that has this style of metal roller tip in this kind of a form factor, because if they do, that might prove to be a really good idea. So initial conclusions are this is a good form factor, but this particular way they've engineered the tip is really superior, and I think it just does a better job. Well, that's my non-scientific overview of correction tape cartridges. This is Joe Van Cleve. You have yourself a good day.